Okay, folks, so we're talking about chapter 4 here. We're looking at long-term financial planning and growth. Okay, I'm just going to talk a couple minutes before we get into some planning models. So you're just going to see this slide for a minute or two. Um, why do we plan? What's the purpose of it? And the good thing is, folks, a lot of you guys have been doing this stuff. You've been doing it since high school, and you'll kind of see that as we go through this chapter and all, and you didn't even realize it, and that's kind of what's the best thing. When we're looking at financial planning, okay, one of the reasons we do it is we're talking about. We're almost going back to what we talked about in chapter 1 with the capital budget, the capital structure, and our net working capital. So we're looking at growing from our current position. So one of the things that we have to look at is, are we going to need new assets? So we kind of go back to our capital budgeting decision there with, do the assets we currently have, are they going to be able to operate in a manner that's going to support the growth? And if not, do we need to go out and invest in new assets, right? Well, that leads us to the next thing, the capital structure. So if we do need new assets, where's that money going to come from? Do we have enough in retained earnings to finance that and pay for that new asset or those new assets, or do we have to go out and get debt, bring on debt again? And what is that financial structure going to be? The other thing that determines is, quite honestly, is our dividends that we pay to the stockholders, the owners of the company. We're looking at, remember, net income goes to dividends and retained earnings. So if we're not going to pay the dividends, then all of that's coming over to retained earnings. Or if we are going to pay dividends, we're reducing our retained earnings. So that may affect how much we have to go out and get debt. Okay. And then the other thing is, just like we did, we started with capital budget, then we had our capital structure, then we went into net working capital. So our liquidity requirements, what are we going to do with our net working capital, those current assets and current liabilities? What's going to happen if we go out and get more assets? We need inventory to go into those assets. So that's going to affect our accounts payable. Okay. And depending on what comes out of those new assets, that inventory sales, that's going to determine accounts receivable and things like that. Okay, so that's why it's very important. The other thing also is when we get into this, we think about our financial planning horizons. How long does it take? Normally, we divide this up into a 2 to 5 year plan and a 1 to 2 year plan. And with what we talked about just a minute ago, think about when you guys were deciding on college. You had to decide, what did you want to do when you got out of college? That determined what your major was going to be. That determined what schools you wanted to look at, and then what your capital structure decision was. Can we pay for those schools? How are we going to pay for those? Are we paying for it, student loans or whatever, right? Well, that got us into the next phase, the planning horizon, 2 to 5 years out. It's not like the cartoons, folks, where if you want to build a plant, Bugs Bunny runs over there, throws a seed in the ground, throws some water on it, and up pops a plant, right? That takes 2 to 5 years out. You got to get approval from the town you're going to be in. You can see some of that going on, where there are going to be tax advantages. Are you going to get tax advantages from the municipalities or from the state or the city? Then you got to get permits, architect, you got to get all that figured out. And then you got to build the building and get it going, right? Just like you folks with college. Again, what did you want to do? And that determined where you went to college, along with the financial aspects. Then you get into the 1 to 2 year plan. So, now that we've got the building going, we're getting the assets, the machinery in there, we're looking at hiring people. Who's the managers? Where's the money coming from? When are we going to get this started? On your 1 to 2 year plan, you seniors are in your 1 year plan. Hey, I'm getting ready to graduate soon. I'm looking for, I've narrowed down, yes, I wanted to be in finance or whatever your major is, but now you got to look at what aspect or what specific area you wanted to be in there. And you're starting to look at what firms you want to work for, maybe what area of the country you want to live in, and things like that. For the juniors, you're looking at, hey, I need an internship to try to set myself apart from these other folks that are going to be graduating when I graduate. Okay, so your planning horizon becomes a big part of that. Okay, next, when you have large companies, you get something like a GE, a Boeing, companies that have multiple divisions out there. A lot of times we have what we call aggregation. The board of directors isn't sitting there looking at each individual project. All they look at is, hey, we got $100 million that we're going to put into R&D or to pursue this growth. And where's that going to, do we approve that or not? Once they approve it, then it kind of funnels down. Something like the snowball effect, the frontline managers are saying, hey, we want to grow here. We have this opportunity. They take it to the district manager. Maybe that goes to the regional manager. And so it kind of snowballs to where once it gets to the board, they're making capital budget decisions on a long-term scale, and they don't know exactly what each individual project is. Okay. Now, when we start putting this planning process together, a couple of things we have to try to think about. One is we got to make some realistic assumptions about, the variables, the sales, the market. Obviously, if you get something thrown in there from left field, kind of like this year with the coronavirus, until this point, the economy was just booming, going crazy. Jobs were high, creating jobs, everything looked good, and then this kind of came out of left field. Nobody really saw this coming. But we have to try to make real assumptions. The market couldn't keep going up like it was, so we knew there was a correction coming sooner or later. The thing is, when is that coming? Okay, so when we make our assumptions, we want to run several different scenarios, and that's where we do our pro forma statements, pro forma income statement, pro forma balance sheet, and we're going to run at least a worst case, most likely case, and best case scenario. Okay, some larger companies might run a lot more scenarios than that. What if we go up 2%? What if we go down 2%? What if it increases 4%? What if it increases 8%? They might run more scenarios, but the minimum you need to do is 3. Your worst case, best case, and most likely case scenario. Okay. So why do we do these financial planning? And why do we do this planning? Well, we want to look at interactions between our decisions. Okay. So if you have the vice president of operations there saying, hey, we're not running at full capacity, man, we can turn the machines up and we can pump out all this inventory. Well, if your marketing department doesn't have a marketing plan to handle that, or hasn't been told about that and preps that marketing plan, now you got a bunch of inventory that nobody knows you had, and so you're sitting on it and you've wasted all of that, right? Or what if marketing comes up with this great game plan and they put it out there, hey, we got this stuff, and they haven't told production and you haven't produced that? Then you got a different problem. Okay, so the reason we plan is to see how all this fits together. Again, think back to your college days when you and your parents were talking about college. Hey, it would be nice if everybody could go to Duke and things like that. And their undergrad program isn't really where their reputation's made. It's on their grad school and PhD program. But the cost could be prohibitive. So we want to make sure it fits with what we're doing. Okay. The other thing is we explore options. What opportunities are out there? Maybe looking at colleges. Yeah, everybody wants to go to a Duke or Carolina or Wake Forest, but you know what? ASU has just as good, if not a better, business department. All you got to look at is our Bowden Investment Group folks. our undergrad students in that Bowden Investment Group consistently go out and beat grad students from Duke, Carolina, and State and Wake Forest in competitions. So you could say, hey, this is a much better opportunity at a better price, and so we could see some options there. Okay, we explore those options. We get to avoid surprises in our manufacturing or in our operations. Hey, wow, production put all this stuff out, but marketing didn't advertise for it, so now we're sitting on it. You want to make sure we plan for that stuff. We want to, and the biggest thing, quite honestly, is to ensure feasibility and internal consistency among our goals. So if we have a goal that we're going to pay for college, but and we don't want to have debt, but then you end up going to a school like Wake Forest that runs you $40,000 plus a year, then you might have to bring on all that debt. Great, you got into it, but it doesn't fit with what your goals and your values and beliefs are, folks. Okay, and I want to stress it's important for a company to do that, but it's also, as students who are getting ready to graduate, it's important for you to spend some time on that when you look at your jobs, where you're going to work, and the salaries you're going to make. It's one thing to say, hey, I'll do whatever to get the job, but if it doesn't fit with who you are and the values and what your core values are, it's not going to be a good fit. You're not going to be happy, and it's going to cause problems down the road. And that's why we do all this planning.